Hello, and today we're reviewing the Ryobi PCL850B missing 18 volt fan. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up we have the inlet hose. The inlet hose on this particular fan is about 3 feet in length and is made out of a high quality tubing material. Of what kind of material it is, I am not sure, but it makes it very hard to kink, so I think that you aren't going to have too many complaints about this particular fan in use. Now, there is a connector at the end of the tubing for connecting to a standard garden hose, and you also need to remember that this fan does not contain any sort of internal pump, and so whatever you connect this particular fan to must be a pressurized water source in order for the to work. Now, with that being said, the connector at the end of the tubing is going to allow you to connect it to a standard garden hose like I already said, but there is also a ball valve on that connector so you can turn the water off at the fan and you don't have to go back and turn it off at the source until you're done using the fan. On my particular fan, I added a quick connect adapter for easier use for connecting it to hoses, and quite frankly this particular system works great for me personally and I have zero complaints about the design here. So with everything involving the hose on this particular fan, everything works great. Oh, also there is a keeper which you can use in order to keep the hose from dragging on the ground by simply taking the hose up through the handle and then bringing it back down and then snapping it into the keeper. So at the end of the day, everything here is very well designed and passes with flying colors. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the base of the fan, and it's not horrible, but it's also not great, unfortunately. It's kind of middle of the road. It has a fairly wide base, and it's not going to fall over easily, but it also rocks back and forth incredibly easy, and a lot of times it'll be resting on its battery compartment more than it'll be resting on its actual base, which can be a little bit of an annoyance to certain individuals, but for me personally, it still doesn't fall over, so it still gets a pass from me as far as I'm concerned. But like I said earlier, it does a lot of rocking back and forth because of just the way it's designed. And with that being said, it does have a nice little feature where you can mount it on top of a couple of screws or nails if you have them spaced properly. And so that is a nice little feature to have. But like I said earlier, it's just not the most stable fan in the whole world. I haven't ever had it fall over completely on me, but I do have it sitting on its battery compartment lid fairly often. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, the power options. Now this particular fan does retain an IPX rating of 4 when the battery bay door is closed. However, you will lose that rating if you use this with an 8 amp hour battery or higher, or if you are using the AC power cord option. The battery bay door is fairly well designed and doesn't fall off every 5 seconds like one of their older misting fans, which I absolutely positively hate. So quite frankly, I do think they did a good job with designing the battery bay door on this particular fan. It snaps back into place whenever you let go of it, so everything works well there. Now, like I said earlier, if you use a 6 amp hour battery or lower, you get the IPX rating of 4, which will protect it against any sort of splash related incidents that may occur. But if you do end up dropping it in the pool, it's going to die on you and that battery is going to die on you, and who knows, you may have a small lithium fire, so don't do that. But with that being said, everything with the battery seems to work just fine, and I haven't had any issues with the fan overheating when using a battery. Unfortunately, that cannot be said about, well, using an extension cord to power the fan. My fan did overheat and turn off when using an extension cord, so unfortunately it seems to be that one of Ryobi's past problems with their battery operated fans that are also hybrid powered seems to have returned with this particular fan. It could just be my copy, but judging by their past history, I kind of doubt it. But then again, maybe it's just my copy. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the power switch. Now the power switch is located on the base of the tool on the front and is a simple flip style switch. It does feature a see-through rubberized cover which will protect it against any sort of splashes from water, and quite frankly it gets the job done. I do not like the particular layout of the switch, however, simply because, well, one side is going to be your high, the other side is going to be your low, and the off position's right in the middle, which makes it a little bit of a pain when you're in a hurry or carrying something in your arms and you reach down to flip the switch and you accidentally flip it too far. I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan of this particular design, and I personally like having the off switch all the way to one side. But with that being said, the switch is completely well functional and it gets the job done. The high mode is going to be more than enough for you to feel the breeze from about 15 feet away, but is also going to allow you to, well, burn through your batteries much quicker, and the low speed is going to be much better for, well, having a longer battery life, but isn't moving nearly as much air. So quite frankly, it's going to be up to you and your own personal needs. I would personally recommend at least having 3 batteries for a full day of use, or at least an 8-hour day of use. So just something to keep in mind. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the pivoting head knobs. Now the knobs to control how much resistance there is for when you are pivoting the head of this particular fan up and down are located on either side of the two arms that hold it in place, and are easily adjustable without the need for any sort of tools. They do have a plastic cover that goes over the metal tightening screws, and they seem to hold it in place just fine, and I don't think you're going to have to mess with these too often. But if you do need to mess with them, they are there and they are very easy to work with. So really nothing else to say other than the fact that I'm glad they included this particular function and that they made it so easy to adjust when you need to. Moving on. Okay, last but not least, we have the pivoting head. Now the pivoting head is made up of several different, well, components. First up, you have the front and rear grille. The front grille is going to be made out of a plastic material and has very small gaps to protect fingers from getting inserted into the fan, so it should be fairly safe to use around small children, unlike some fans I grew up with. And then, of course, you have the rear grille, which is going to be made out of metal, unlike the front grille, and also features those same small gaps. Now, this fan is not going to be an easy fan to clean, unfortunately, because you will have to take out multiple screws in order to access the internals of the fan for cleaning. And of course, this is going to be great for if you have small children, but if you're the kind of person that likes to constantly be cleaning their tools after every use, this is going to make it somewhat of a pain. So there is a little bit of a trade-off there. And of course, you have the misting nozzles that are located on the front of the fan, which will mist on either side, just in front of the two pivoting head knobs, and they do a fairly good job. If you do need to end up replacing or cleaning them, you can take them off with your hand without the need of any sort of tool. So, quite frankly, there's another good aspect of the design. And last but not least, of course, you have the carrying handle. The carrying handle is made out of plastic and located at the very top of the fan. It is fairly large, and you can easily use your, well, bare hands or gloved hands in order to carry this particular fan. And I really do like having the carrying handle because I'm not a huge fan of bear hugging fans all over the place. So with that being said, everything here gets a pass from me, and I don't really see any major issues. Oh, and you can point the head of the fan up at 12 o'clock or down to 4 or 8 o'clock depending on what direction you have it pointed. So yeah, that's about it. Moving on. Okay, without a battery, the fan weighs 4,818 grams, which is about 10.6 pounds. And with a 4 amp hour battery, it weighs 5,552 grams, which is about 12.2 pounds. So it's definitely on the heavier side. And size-wise, it is just definitely much larger than Ryobi's 7.5-inch fan. And if I had to pick one of the two fans to take somewhere, it would definitely be the smaller fan. But then again, if I'm trying to cool off a whole sports team, the larger fan is probably going to be the better option. So it just comes down to your own personal needs. But with that being said, let's go ahead and recap with the pros and cons. And the first pro is 18 volt / AC power. You have the ability to power this fan with two different power options, which means it's quite versatile, and in my opinion, that makes it a pro. Mounting holes. The ability to mount this on mounting holes is definitely going to be a pro. However, I just don't really see very many people doing it considering how large this particular fan is. Carrying handle. Yeah, pretty much all fans have carrying handles, but if you've ever used a fan that doesn't have a carrying handle, you'll be very grateful when you start using one that does. Build quality. Overall, the build quality feels very high quality on this particular fan, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect that in all aspects of the electrical design. But overall, the external build quality is very nice. Water resistant. Water resistant means that you'll be able to use this around pools and other water features and not have to worry about if some water accidentally gets on the fan. Just remember, that doesn't mean that it's waterproof, and it will die if it falls in your pool. And the first and only meh would be heavy. Yeah, it's a fairly heavy fan. This is definitely not going to be the most portable fan in the whole world, but then again, you kind of understand that when you start looking at it at the store and realize how much bigger it is than your standard portable fan. So yeah, it's not really a pro, it's not really a con, it's just kind of meh. And the first con is overheats on AC. Unfortunately, this fan is prone to overheating when you have an extension cord plugged into it, or at least my copy of the fan does. This could just be something randomly wrong with my particular copy, but unfortunately Ryobi does have a little bit of a reputation for having tools that overheat when AC cords are plugged into them, if you know anything about their previous generations of hybrid fans. So quite frankly, I was really hoping that they had resolved that particular issue, but unfortunately it appears that they did not. So yeah, this is definitely a con. And the next con is price, coming in at $150. That's a lot of money to pay for a fan that overheats when it's plugged into an AC power cord. It might be a little bit more reasonable if it didn't overheat when you plugged into an AC power cord, but as it stands, $150 is definitely too much money for this particular fan. And last but not least, not easy to clean. If you live anywhere where there's lots and lots of dust, you will always be very appreciative of a fan that is easy to clean. But unfortunately, this is not one of them. And that's it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this particular fan. I think it's a very well built, well designed, and has a very good amount of airflow that comes out of it fan. I also think that it has an overheating issue when used with an extension cord, and it's overpriced. Quite frankly, I kind of think that the cons outweigh the pros here, and I really am going to have a hard time recommending this particular fan. If you can find it on sale or at a discounted price, maybe pick it up, but until they fix the issues that this particular fan is having, I would give it a pass and wait till the next generation comes out. But then again, that might be a while because Ryobi is really good about refreshing tools that don't need a refresh and skipping over all the tools that do need a refresh. So until Ryobi stops being drunk, we'll just have to wait and see. And that is it for this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. God bless.